So I have two really unhinged home decor ideas. I'll show you the space. It is my guest bathroom space and I'm hanging something from the ceiling. So let me insert the clip. Okay, so here's my guest bathroom. This is the ceiling space that we are working with. I'm wanting to hang it right in the middle between the two vents there. Okay, so that's the space. My two options, I want to have like a faux chandelier in there. And I have this like piece of wavy wood. Let me get it so I can show you. So this is the piece of wood. It was just a piece of scrap wood that I had from a different project. I painted it red. Basically, I'm gonna hang this up on the ceiling and the faux chandelier is gonna be hanging down from this. So picture like kind of chains going like this, things hanging down. Okay, so that's the vibe, but my two options, one of them is to make a rubber duck chandelier. I got all of these fun rubber ducks from Amazon in a bunch of different colors. So like pink, red, green, blue, purple. And then I found this, which originally is like for the pool, but it lights up. So I was thinking like, and I got some baby ones too, like this big. So I was thinking, what if I like make some strings of these rubber ducks, like some strings with a bunch of different colors, some with like a big one, and like a string will connect them. So hard to describe, but I found all these beads basically, and especially these ones that look like bubbles. So I thought, you know, what if I have some strings in between each rubber duck, things hanging down. And then I also got these like really fun jewels in a bunch of different colors that I would hang from the bottom. So picture like a rubber duck with like a jewel on the bottom. Anyways, that's one idea. This is more like funky and tacky almost, but I really like the idea. So that's idea number one. Really envision it and trust me and know that I would do a good job. It would be cute. Idea number two is to put disco balls in there. I have a bunch of these disco balls that spin. Same idea, these would hang from that red piece. And I do have like a bunch of different sizes, so this is the biggest size. And then I got like some little ones as well, and then some tiny baby ones. So I'd basically make like a cluster of disco balls. I really like this idea too. This idea will definitely be more heavy on the ceiling, so I'll have to like figure out how to install it right. I wanted to show you kind of what I'm thinking. So this is like the vibe that I'm going for because I found these like ornaments that kind of look like bubbles. They're like shiny and iridescent. And then I'm basically like putting this giant needle that I have through the duck. And I am stringing it just on this fishing line. And I think it's gonna look really cute. I added a little hook and basically like these are all gonna hang. It's so hard to describe, but I can see it in my head. Okay, so I did decide to go with the rubber ducks and the bubbles just because I felt like the idea was more me, even though it was like the weirder idea. And so I got right to work making the strands that were going to basically hang from that wood piece. I used this giant, I think this was like a tapestry needle. I ordered it on Amazon, but it worked great. It felt so wrong to do, but I just strung it through with the needle and then onto the fishing line, and I added like the ornaments and beads as well. My original vision was kind of to have like make a bunch of these strands and hang them like a bunch of different ways. But I keep getting comments from you guys, and I've had several people tell me in real life too, that I should basically like take this wood down, make a big like bathtub shaped wood and paint it blue, and basically have the ducks like upside down like they're swimming, so that it looks like I have like upside down ducks swimming on my bathroom ceiling, which I really like that idea too. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, which do I do? So this was when I completely changed routes on this project. I went to Home Depot and I started with a piece of plexiglass because I thought, okay, I could literally make the pond like see-through and maybe put resin on top so that it's like a blue see-through plastic. And I was like, great, like that would be so cool if you could see through it like it was water. So I started by making a mock-up shape because it had to fit between those two vents. So I made it like kind of skinnier in the middle. And I got my jigsaw and I started cutting, and literally, I did everything it said I should do. I taped both sides, and I even had like the plexiglass jigsaw blade, and it worked great in some areas. In other areas, it just did not. So I scrapped that idea. I took down the old piece of wood that I'd attached, and because I'd used anchors to attach it, I just like quickly patched up the ceiling, went back to Home Depot, and I got a piece of wood. And I'm showing you guys all of these mistakes because like this is how projects happen. Like you have to reroute and rethink your idea so many times, at least I do, and it's just like realistic that it takes a while to get it right. So I cut out my shape with the jigsaw, and I was like holding my breath that it would fit, and it fit perfectly. I went on with the second coat of the ceiling patch, which I use like the popcorn ceiling patch. I'd never used that before, but it worked great. And then I ordered this flexible molding because I wanted to pour resin onto this wood so that it could look like water, but I needed something that was going to hold the resin in place. So I stuck that down onto the wood, and then I used this clear caulking, and I went all the way around, and this is because I just didn't trust that it wasn't gonna leak. The last thing I wanted to happen was to like pour the resin and then it was like seeping through the gaps where the two pieces were met together, or like any of the sides or anything like that. So I did that. This is like the mock-up, by the way, of how I want this to look. It's gonna be like resin poured in to look like water, and I was gonna paint the base of the wood. So here I am going in with like a really faint light blue. I think it took like a full 24 hours for the caulking to cure, and I let the paint dry, of course, as well, and it felt really secure. I felt confident about pouring the resin. So the next step was deciding what size ducks I wanted to use. I found these little ducks that are supposed to be for the pool that light up, but the tab to like light it up was on the bottom. So I was like, okay, I probably can't use those. But I got like really small ones and then like a medium size, and I tried scattering like the medium with the small, and I didn't love that. And then I tried just doing the small, but it felt just so busy. So I ended up deciding to go with the medium. But I went ahead and painted in all of the details because I am going to pour resin over this, like I've said, but it will have like a slight blue tint to it, but you're still going to be able to see what's painted underneath. So I wanted to kind of paint the board to look like water, kind of swirling around like the ducks were swimming. So I just used my paintbrush and a bit of a darker blue, and I basically made all these little details in the water. And what really made it is I added these white little swirlies, and I was going to basically place the duck right where the water like rippled. Here is that medium size I decided to do. It just felt the least like cluttered, and it just looked right, but it did take me a long time, and I was going back and forth and doubting myself so much on the sizing. But I did get these ornaments then that I added in. I basically just pulled the top of the ornament, like that silver piece, off, and each ornament had like a neck on it. So I like very carefully had to balance these and just kind of see where I wanted them placed before I glued them down. I know at least one person is going to be like, why didn't you have the babies follow the mom? I tried that too, but it just again looked really crowded. I wanted this to be simple, and I wanted the bubbles to be like the detail work. And I love how this turned out. It like reminded me of the ducks being in a bathtub, which is like really what I was going for. So I used E6000 glue to glue the ducks down and the bubbles, and I knew I was going to pour the resin, so that again would be like a second layer of assurance that everything was going to stay in place. So once that was dry, I started working on mixing up the resin, and I know this resin looks like a little yellowish. It shouldn't be like that, but I was using the last of what I had, and I was just hoping it was going to dry like normal. I put in like some resin dye to make it a really faint light blue, and then this was honestly the funnest part and made it feel like, okay, this is gonna work, like this is all gonna come together and be worth it. I started adding in the resin, and I just added it in batches. I was really hoping I wasn't gonna run out because the resin I use, like I buy it from Amazon, and it takes like several days for it to come, and I was so impatient. But luckily I did not run out. It worked just fine, and I went in with my paintbrush, and to kind of like coat it in, I wanted to make sure it got in between all of the bubbles, and I really wanted to do the thinnest layer possible because I did not want this piece to be heavy because it was going to hang on the ceiling, right? So I did the thinnest layer I could, and this is the next day after it had dried. It literally looked gorgeous. It did exactly what I needed it to do. It all dried fine. It looked beautiful. All my details that I had painted showed up underneath, and all the bubbles felt like super secure, as well as the ducks. So I did want this to light up, but I don't have electrical wiring in this bathroom, so I bought this battery operated like light strip, and originally I thought I was going to put it like on the inside of that little molding around the edges, but I put some of the bubbles too close to the edges, so I had to like like again figure out a different plan. So I paused on that project and started trying to figure out how in the world I was gonna get this hung. This was the hardest part of this project, but basically what I ended up doing is using these little screw-in hooks I got at Home Depot, and I used 5 of them at different points on the pond, and I made the holes from the top and then I screwed them in on the bottom, and the screws were poking out through the top. So I put like a little washer cap on top of them, and then I used the ornaments to hide the screws, which worked out so well. And then I was like, oh my gosh, okay, well now I have the hooks attached, but I have no idea where to drill into the ceiling. So I made a paper version, and I basically placed the real version on top with some lipstick on the bottom of the hook, so it left a little mark where each hook was, and I pinned that to the ceiling. Oh my gosh, it was so much work, but it literally worked perfect. I drilled my ceiling holes, and then I went back to the lighting problem. What I ended up doing is, because there was going to be a gap where this hung, I attached the lighting to the underside. It just had like a sticky back, and once I had that done, I added some final details by having some of the bubble strands like hang down kind of like in chandelier fashion, and I just basically secured the fishing line through the underside and tied it secure. I spent a good long while making these strands and kind of scattered them throughout the pond, and I actually really like this touch. Here is how the hooks looked on the underside, and I tested out the lighting, and I was getting so excited to hang this up. It looked so good. Here is how the lighting looked from the underneath with the hooks as well. I basically just outlined the shape, and then here's how those little bubble strands turned out. And then, okay, so this is the method I used to hang it. I basically screwed in these little circle things, and then I attached on like a chandelier hook, and I basically used that hook to attach to the hooks I drilled onto the back so that it could just hang, and there was a little gap in between. And here's how it looked. Oh my gosh, I was so excited. I was playing around with how the lighting looked. They had several options. My favorite was like the plain white, but it did have a little faded like strobe option as well. I seriously think it's just so fun and so cool and so unhinged. It's such a crazy idea, but to see it executed is just like so fun. I know this will make me smile every single day. Love how the little strands hanging down turned out. And then here's how like the hanging looks from the inside. That battery pack just sits at the top, and you can take it down and recharge it at any time. But yeah, I love how this project turned out, and now I have ducks swimming upside down on my guest bathroom ceiling.